Warning, due to the nature of topics about sexual assault and violence against women, listener and viewer discretion is highly advised before listening to this episode.
They're coming here. They're waiting at the edge of the city. The piano round, buildings at night. And they'll take you one by one, and no one will hear you scream. No one will hear you scream.
What's good, everybody? What's good, everybody? It's your boy Walterdoom back for another episode of Film and Guts. And just imagine, how life could be. You wake up in the morning, you get yourself some breakfast, you put yourself on some good tunes to the radio. Maybe you listen to Spotify like me, because I hate the radio so much, but start your morning off, get ready, get dressed, and you head to work. And you're just happy-go-lucky as it can. It's going to be another great day at work. People aren't going to give you shit. No one's going to gaslight you. You actually get your work done, and you get praised for it. Unfortunately, that's not a lot of our realities. I myself have dealt with many toxic work environments, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you have dealt with toxic work environments. The movie I am going to talk about is the movie Pollen. Came out, I believe, 2023, 2022, one of those years. I can't remember off top right now. I didn't have a chance to write it in my notes. That's one thing I didn't write in my notes. When did this movie come out? But anyway, the movie follows this young woman named Hera. She is a bright-eyed new worker at this, I believe, some type of firm, some accounting firm agency, and her landing her dream job ends up turning into a nightmare after she meets her senior, Zach, who is pretty much praised in the office, loved by everyone, takes Hera out on a date and ends up sexually assaulting her after he drops her back home. Hera at first declined. She blatantly declines his advances, but Zach forces her and emotionally blackmails her and coerces her into, I don't know why I can't say that word right now, coerce her into intercourse. That's so terrible. After the whole ordeal, Hera is given a plant by Zach, and on top of that plant is also a morning after pill. What we see here is a classic case of toxic work environments. Maybe not to the extreme on how a lot of us deal with it every single day, but just enough to make you go, that is some fucked up shit, and this is not what's supposed to be happening when you're working at a job. So for today's episode, I am going to be talking about Pollen and its relativity to toxic work environments. So I'm gonna give y'all like some examples on how this movie displays the toxic work environment. But not only that, we're gonna kind of explore this movie a little bit more on the sense of like how you guys yourselves can handle toxic work environments. I don't know how good these tips are, because I too have been dealing with toxic work environments as well. And we're also going to explore possible solutions for Hera to see what she could have done in this film if she was a real person to kind of solve her issue with the toxic work environment. So, anyway, first things first, let's talk about what is a toxic work environment. So, I was reading this article on the Muse and it was talking about toxic work environments. And I really should stop saying the word so many times. I feel like I'm repeating myself over and over again. And the way they define the subject, they define it as a toxic work environment is one where negative behaviors such as manipulation, bullying, yelling, and so on are so intrinsic to the culture of the organization that a lack of productivity, a lack of trust, high stress levels, infighting, and discrimination become the norm. Eli Boheman describes the situation as it's an environment that makes you feel psychologically unsafe. You might feel like you'll be punished, humiliated, or rejected for speaking up, whether to share ideas, raise concerns or objections, or show up as yourself at work. Boheman warns that over time, toxic workplaces can lead to anxiety or depression. An employee might find themselves crying before work because they feel trapped. They don't want to face yet another day of stress and rejection, but they really need the job. Or it can manifest as anxious people-pleasing behaviors where someone works hard to exceed expectations even while feeling underappreciated, eventually leading to burnout. Now, I could truly say I have dealt with toxic work environments and I have dealt with burnout before. Maybe I have not recognized it as burnout, but definitely it was burnout and it was there. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys out there have dealt with the same thing too. Here are some of the signs, because I'm pretty sure like we all kind of like, I feel like a lot of people call their job toxic, but sometimes it's not really toxic. It's just the people that are there are kind of toxic, but it's not necessarily the job. So anyway, there's a difference. So there are toxic work environments. So here are some of the signs of a toxic work environment. So there are no boundaries around work. So basically, like, when you put up a boundary, it always gets violated, whether it's like, hey, I don't want to stay late because I got something to do afterwards. And the job is telling you like, well, this is your job. First things first, I can't stand the fact where jobs kind of make it seem like it's your duty or it's your life to give your life away to them. Yes, you do work for them for a number of hours a week, and it is your duty to do the job that they ask you to do. No, it is not your responsibility to give your life to the job. Another sign of a toxic work environment is people don't trust each other. There's no room to make mistakes. And they go into a little bit of detail about it, where Quinn has coached a lot of clients who were working in what she called aggressive dog-eat-dog cultures. They're very blame heavy. There's no room for any errors and learn from it. If you make a mistake, you're hauled over the coals. She says, in an environment like this, people start to do whatever it takes to avoid being in the line of blame and get ahead of their colleagues, like not sharing work-related information with teammates or throwing coworkers under the bus when something goes wrong. It's something like that has happened to me before. In my toxic work environment experience at one of my jobs, I remember a supervisor used to work there, very toxic, caused a lot of issues within the company. They ended up leaving, and they left without leaving anything for the next person to work from after they left. Now, to me, it's a sign of how they didn't really care about the company itself. They were just in it for themselves. And I mean, me personally, I think it's kind of fucked up where somebody tries to hold that much power just so they could be called back and ass kissed just to get information from them, only for them to turn around and just do some BS and say like, well, you know, you guys could do your own information and connections and what have you. I don't know. I just think there's something off with that at the end of the day. But moving on, this type of culture can be especially hard on minorities who already have to deal with the expectation of always on excellence and perfection, which is so true. Being black, you get stigmatized a lot. Being black and a woman, you get stigmatized even more. So yeah, and only thing that's expected from you is perfection, which is like something that is not realistic. If a white person messes up, it's an opportunity for growth for them, Simon says. But for minorities, it can often feel like an indictment on our status and roles at the company. Another sign is people treat each other with contempt. Contempt, a key pillar in psychologist John Gottman's definition of toxic relationships, also comes up in a toxic work environment, Quinn says. She recalls coaching a client, a lawyer whose boss would roll his eyes at her in meetings, rude, or even ignore her suggestions only to pick them up when someone else, often a man, offered the same idea a few minutes later. The same boss would also revise the lawyer's work over and over again, according to Quinn, and the edits weren't just for substance. Many were personal attacks on her writing or working style. See, I had a friend that had that same kind of issues where their boss would not listen to any of their suggestions and will often take suggestions when it comes from other areas, once again, from a man. And at first, I didn't really think it was a real thing per se, because I'm not a woman. I can't relate to women's problems like I wish I could, you know? At the end of the day, I'm a man. I only understand things from a man's perspective, and I only understand things from a black man's perspective as well. So personally, for me, I couldn't understand her issues fully with that situation. She did kind of have a little bit of solace when she did get like a coworker that understood like all the things that needed to be done. So whenever there was a suggestion needed, that person would suggest it for her. And the boss would literally be like, oh my God, gushing over it and having orgasms about it. But when you really think about it, it's like it really is a huge bias just to hear like, you know, something is not paid attention to or even suggested because a woman has said it, but it's more listened to when a man says it, you know. And they would do also the same thing. They would revise a lot of the stuff that they wrote and everything like that, and it was really just messed up right there. And I thought that was strange behavior. I didn't understand that. That's weird, you know. Honestly, I mean, there's some people I feel like should not even be in the power position that they are, but I mean, that's just the way of life sometimes. I mean, it's like, you know, people are in the position that they are for a reason. Doesn't necessarily mean it's always a good reason. But anyway, more on the signs. The interpersonal relationships aren't healthy. There is no support for employee growth. Now, here's one thing that I do hate about like a lot of times dealing with companies. They always tell you about like, oh yeah, we're always about growth. We're trying to have people in our company grow and blah, blah, blah. I've seen so many times in my own personal job that it's not necessarily like that. Usually people that they hire are like pushed more into more of a growth position, is usually outside people, outside forces, or it's usually like the jackass, the person that you just don't expect to actually advance and get the raise, but because so-and-so knows how to talk to people, play the game. And I hate that term, play the game. because they know how to play the game and they do all this politicking, they end up getting like the promotions that they want, while the people that work hard end up suffering for it and still have to work the same crappy job for another year or so. I was watching, years ago, I was watching this career coaching video on YouTube, and they were talking about just like how to grow and usually working like a lazy worker. And a lot of things that this person was talking about was very interesting, because it was like talking about how so-and-so is not really a hard worker, they're a lazy worker, but the things that they do is they'll work hard on things that need to be worked hard on, that they know is of high value. And it resonated with me on like how like a lot of people we see that we are like, just that person shouldn't have a promotion. Why is this person in charge? It's because they know how to do the lazy work. They don't do like the tedious task or anything like that. They know how to do like the real hard work that's like high importance, of value. And managers eat that shit up. They eat that shit up like it's a fresh batch of pizza. As they talk about like employee growth, many people in toxic workplaces have to figure out on their own because there's no mentorship or support to help them grow, which I feel like is a lot of problem these days with a lot of jobs, is that no one wants to teach anybody how to do anything anymore. It's terrible. It's disgusting. He warns that this has gotten worse virtually since it's that much easier to become disconnected from your manager or team. And it takes its toll in particular on entry-level employees who are left to their own devices in such a workplace, leading to demotivation and disillusionment, as well as employees from marginalized communities who already tend to get very little support to translate potential growth opportunities, Simon says. When I talk to people of color in my industry, most are just trying to excel at their job description. They may have no idea what other opportunities may exist for them at their firms. Often no one else is championing them, leading to career stagnation as compared to their peers. Here's another one that's like really big. Gaslight. People feel gaslight. And my goodness, have I been gaslight quite a few times in the toxic work environment. Another one is people regularly experience physical symptoms of work stress. Work stress is one of the biggest things. And the last thing that I want to talk about is, one of the last signs are people are disengaged and turnover is high. So I don't know how many of y'all could relate to some of those symptoms, those signs of what makes a toxic work environment, but I definitely can relate to a lot of those. I personally have been dealing with toxic work since who knows how long at many different jobs that I've been on. How I dealt with them is probably not the healthiest, I would say, honestly, but we all have different ways of coping and dealing with that. So let's kind of see right now, from after learning about what a toxic work environment is, let's kind of go back into the movie with Hera. Let's see what kind of stuff that they talk about in this movie that relates to toxic work environment. Yo, Walterdoom here, and if you guys are enjoying this podcast and you want to donate to the show, yo, your boy got a Ko-fi account. Make sure you check that out in the link in the bio and donate whatever you can. Also, if you are a creator, a director, or anybody that's involved with podcasting or film and you want to come along on a podcast and talk with your boy, hit me up. My email is in the description, and you can hit me up on Instagram on Walterdoom Horror. Also, if you are enjoying the show and you love your boy and you want to give him like a few follows, likes, subscribe, comments, go ahead. It's free 99 to do that. Other than that, let's get back to the show. So I basically started off talking about the assault on Hera. So one of the biggest things that happens in the work environment in this movie is sexual harassment. That's one of the things that they highlight. So Hera is definitely like being sexually harassed, just not only by Zach, but she is also being harassed by Gabe, who is the big boss of the company that she works at. So to kind of set it all up, I mean, Hera, you know, she's going through all these issues after Zach basically assaulted her. She's being bullied by her coworker, Vicky. Vicky ends up dating Zach. Zach is throwing his relationship with Vicky in Hera's face. Zach is continuously humiliating Hera in different situations. And the one person that kind of shows a little bit of humility is Gabe. Gabe is the only one that kind of shows humility because him and Hera ended up going to state colleges while all the other people that worked there went to Ivy League schools. So it's the Ivy League prep person attitude that's going on, the prep people club and everything like that. But Gabe shows a bit of humility. So he was one character that we thought we could trust until later on when Hera ends up getting fired. Gabe ends up propositioning Hera, tells her like, hey, I could write you a letter of recommendation, but you know, as long as you give me a little something from time to time, you know, you'll be good. You'll be good. So that is one thing that happens. I mean, honestly, it's a terrible situation to be in. Sexual harassment is pretty much rampant in the workplace. It is definitely one of the biggest problems that happen. Another thing that happens that is a problem is in-office bullying, like I mentioned before. After Hera has her relationship with Zach, Zach ends up mentally and sexually abusing her. He ends up dating Vicky, who is a total narcissist, and ends up throwing the relationship in Hera's face. The plant that Hera got from Zach, Vicky tries to devalue it in every way possible by explaining that it's cheap, that he gives this plant to every girl that he sleeps with. Yeah, and basically just gets treated unfairly by her boss, who is in a way kind of bullying her as well, especially when she makes comments about her appearance. In-office bullying is another topic that they really do touch base on, and they really kind of show how, you know, how toxic the workplace can get. Another thing that is a big thing in this film, another topic that they kind of jump on, is about autonomy, self-autonomy for self. So throughout this whole film, and this is more relating to like women and them being in the workplace and trying to balance, well, have that balancing act in life and everything like that, you know, between trying to be, you know, the working woman and trying to be the wife, the girlfriend, the mother, the daughter, you know, the best friend, you know, just a lot of things. And what we learned in this film is that Hera doesn't really have much time for anything. So she loses a bit of her autonomy, especially with the scene where she's having dinner with her sister, Demi, and her niece, Corey. And Hera ends up microwaving food for her sister and niece to eat versus actually making a home-cooked meal for the both of them. Now, the thing is, what makes this movie interesting, because I feel like each time I watch this movie, it's like an A24 film that got away. It was the A24 film that got away. The thing is that in this movie, what makes the horror crazy is that there is a monster that is haunting Hera throughout the film. It is a tree monster that basically I get conceived in a way after her abuse from Zach. Now, we're not told exactly who the tree monster is, but there are definitely different takes and ideas on what this tree monster could be. So I was looking at an article by the Fugitives, and they gave their thoughts about what this tree monster and what Pollen could be entirely. So to kind of like get into what they talk about, I'm gonna talk about what they talked about right now. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and mention what they talked about, and I will get into what my thoughts are about what this tree monster could be. So on the article, it says Hera's boss, the sexual predator at the office named Zach, showed interest in Hera and asked her out on a date. He even gave her a beautiful plant as a gift. However, during their first date, Zach made it clear that his intentions were not romantic, but rather focused on physical intimacy. Despite Hera expressing her disapproval multiple times, Zach disregarded her objections and forced himself upon her without her consent. The flower, its beauty, provided with her sense of comfort and hope for the future. However, Zach was only interested in satisfying his own desires and he even neglected to use protection, forcing Hera to take a morning after pill against her will, despite the potential complication. Technically, in some states, that's assault right there. The gifted plant became a symbol of the child Hera might have had if she hadn't taken the pill. She nurtured the plant as if it were her own, dressing it in colors that matched its flowers. Despite the haunting memories associated with the plant and what Zach had done to her, Hera couldn't bring herself to throw it away. Despite experiencing trauma and abuse, Hera's connection with the plant reflects her innate resilience and capacity for healing. However, her nurturing of the plant mirrors the instinctive care and love she might have directed toward a child. It becomes a bittersweet reminder of the loss she feels after the plant began to torment Hera, triggering the unsettling visions and hallucinations associated with it. Yeah, it was definitely she was definitely seeing that plant everywhere. That plant, man. The pollen from the flower served as a representation of the toll that sexual abuse took on her, causing her to lose touch with reality. Gradually, she started experiencing haunting visions of a demonic tree-like figure, symbolizing Zach's presence in her life. Just as she desired to distance herself from Zach's negative energy, she found herself unable to completely escape his influence, leaving her trapped in a state of psychological turmoil. So with the Fugitives, they think that the plant monster, the tree man, is Zach's presence. You know, I don't really agree to that too much. I think the plant monster represents something else. I think it represents more of like Hera's anger, her repressed anger and trauma that she's dealt with from the assault. So HighonFilms, they wrote an article about this movie, and they kind of agreed to the same things I was saying about what this tree monster could be. They write, the tree man is actually the metaphor for the trauma that the job and relationship embed in both Hera's body and mind. The first time Hera spots the man is also the night when Zach coerces her to have sex. Her anxiety and her inability to come to terms with what happened and her deep embarrassment to address the issue result in a deep trauma that is unaware of. We see Hera sneezing the pollen-laden mucus even the time the situation at her office gets tense. Slowly, the workplace turning more unbearable and Zach revealing his true colors, the tree man becomes her frequent tormentor. Which he does. So the thing is, like, before we really see the tree monster, we see in the beginning of this movie, we see an unknown woman that we have no idea who she is, but she committed suicide, or she unalived herself, I should say. by lynching herself in the woods. The only thing we have of her is that we know that she started dating somebody in the office and it didn't go well, assuming that it might be Zach. And the one thing that we see for this woman, well, from this woman, is that she is covered in pollen as she's like dying on the leaves and on the tree. I think because of Zach's abusive nature, he does kind of conceive this whole monster that is within all these women, who ends up seeing the monster tormenting them. So it's like when, think about like any traumatic experience anyone has been through, you know, there's always that unbearable feeling, that ghost that kind of lurks around. I know everyone has some type of trauma in their life, depending on how small, how big it is. The thing that we all have in common is we always have some type of monster eating us inside. Obviously, whenever Hera is being provoked at work by either Zach, Vicky, or Lori, she ends up seeing this monster kind of come to life and kind of tormenting her in ways like, you know, this is what's going to be around you. Like it stays attached to her for the most part. And it doesn't help that when her niece Corey starts seeing this same monster, it kind of makes you question like what is going on in this world of Pollen. So I didn't really think too much about Corey's own trauma, because they do mention like when she started seeing the monster, a boy at her school pulled her hair and it traumatized her because it kind of reminded her of her dad. Now, I didn't even take that in consideration of what that meant. You know, it's almost like when I was talking about I saw the TV glow, and I was talking about the character Maddie, and how if Maddie, well, not if Maddie, but how Maddie was going through a house of abuse herself, you know, and the way she said it was based on what she said. And it's like one of those blink, if you blink, you will miss it. She basically told Owen like, yeah, you need to leave in the morning, because if you don't, if my stepdad catches you here, he's going to bust my face up. That's telling you right there, like, it's not the first time the stepdad has abused Maddie in any type of way for any reason. So just like in I Saw the TV Glow, they literally like throw this line in the movie, and it's like literally I feel like it's a blink and you'll miss it. And this one I totally missed. But HighonFilms, they kind of give their thoughts about like what possibly could be the reason why Corey was starting to see the monster. While the tree man can indeed be seen as a figure standing for Hera's mental decay, things become a little complex when Corey starts with her own experiences and encounters with the tree man. With this detail, mental images of Hera and immediate reality become inseparable. However, given the fact that Corey herself was subject to a problematic relationship with her father, with the possibility of him hitting her, as is revealed by Demi, a possible reading at this point for the treatment can be that it stands for the universal and pervasive traumas of women caused by the agents of patriarchy. There goes that famous word we all love. Oh man, that famous word that motherfuckers hate to hear, you know. The word that women love to use and the word that men love to hate. Patriarchy. Well, at least white man's, but we ain't gonna get into all that, bruh. But Corey sees the tree man because she shares her aunt's experience. Although dissimilar in nature with the patriarchy, Hera's workplace harassment, ranging from the jibes from Vicky to the unhealthy relationship with Zach, indicates nothing but the far-reaching roots of patriarchy. I don't know about all that about the patriarchy shit, but you know, it is definitely like rooted into that. I mean, there is a lot of patriarchal stuff happening in this film where Zach at one point tells Hera like, hey, you might not be cut out for this job. You need to probably get something else, become a teacher or something, or even just marry a rich man, be a rich man's wife. You're hot enough for that type shit. But yeah, there's a lot of like patriarchal things that happen in this film. And some of the women take on the same attributes as these men as they're creating this toxic work environment. As much as we all hate that word patriarchy, there is a lot of patriarchal things that are happening in this film. The thing about going back to the monster is, like I mentioned before, I feel like it is a sense of like anguish, repressed rage, and trauma, because in the end, after Hera loses her plant Grace, which she cares for as a child, like mentioned earlier, she ends up, or if I didn't mention it earlier, I'm mentioning it now. Like, she took care of her plant from Zach as a child. After Hera loses Grace because Corey was told to destroy Grace, the plant, Hera starts losing her mind about losing the plant. She ends up going back to her job that she got fired from, looking for Zach, trying to look for him just to tell him like, hey, our child is dying. She needed to talk to him. And then that's when she actually came clean about how Zach made her take the morning after pill. So a few minutes after these scenes, you do get the plant monster back, and he's tormenting her again. He's literally just hanging around her. The torment and rage is just building up to the point where she thinks about actually unaliving herself. We'll get back into more when I talk about the end of the film, but moving on, I want to talk about the pollen, because there's a lot of pollen in this film, and she does sneeze a lot of mucus in this film. HighonFilms did touch base on it, but I want to touch base on it for a little bit. So first thing I thought about is like, okay, what does pollen really represent? And this is my thoughts about what they meant by pollen. So taken from kidshealth.org, they define pollen as: pollen is a fine powder produced by certain plants when they reproduce. Keyword, reproduce. During the spring, summer, and fall season, it's released into the air and picked up by the wind, which brings it to other plants to fertilize them. Inside of these pollen grains are proteins that commonly cause allergic reactions, such as sneezing, runny nose, and itchy eyes. When breathed in, the pollen that's most often responsible for causing allergies comes from grasses, trees, and weeds. Many people with asthma are allergic to pollen. When they breathe it in, it can trigger their asthma symptoms. Now, see, I have asthma, but I don't know. I wouldn't say like I get allergic from grass, but definitely I do not want to work in no grass fields because that shit is terrible for me. My thoughts. So here's my thoughts about what this pollen could be. And I really do think, because it is about reproduction, motherhood, and trying to balance things in a working woman sense, and trying to just be a whole woman in general, I really do think like the pollen is like the reproduction of the reproduction from women, but it's being used as like, in a way, as conflict. And Hera's wanting to be a full woman. Like, all she really wanted to be was Zach's girlfriend, and Zach did not want that for her, or with her, I should say. And what he ended up doing is use her for her body and impregnated her for his own gratification, and force her to use the morning after pill with no concern of like all the damages that could be done to her after the fact. I know I some of y'all are probably like listening to this and like, Doom, come on, bro, why are you talking about this? But man, I can't help it right now. I've watched this movie like a few times, and each time I watch this film, I always think about like how this is like the one A24 film that got away. Like this movie is like heavy on like the metaphors about women in the workplace and just like women's autonomy and reproduction and just wanting and just, you know, female motherhood and everything like that. So we could tell with like other characters like Lori, she I believe has kids in the movie, but we don't really see the kids and she doesn't sound too appreciative of them. Like Hera is appreciative of her own pseudo motherhood when she becomes a mother to that plant Grace that is given to her by Zach.
Call it the cost of living, but it's so impossibly high that in order to actually afford that, you need to sacrifice everything that makes life worth living. So what's the point? But then if you don't want to pay the cost of living and you'd rather just die, oh, you're mentally ill, go see somebody. What? And what gets me is this whole time they have the nerve to call it a free market economy, but that just doesn't make any sense because that's based on the principle of supply and demand. And if it's based on the principle of supply and demand and no one wants to live, then you lower the cost.
Now, I mean, I don't think I really need to go into any more about Grace the plant because we know already based on like what I mentioned earlier from the Fugitives article and parts of HighonFilms article that Grace the plant is the lost child to Hera. And that's why she pretty much mothers the plant so much. Hence why she puts so much value into the plant. Hence why she dresses like the plant in its colors. It's because she really is loving that plant like her own child. It's like when people don't have kids, but they become dog parents and they take care of the dog better than they would have other people. I'm sorry, but some dog people are fucking weird to me. I'm just saying. But I mean, no disrespect to the dog people out there that listen to me, but I'm just saying, like, there are some dog people I feel like take better care of their dog than they do other humans, you know? But that's what not Grace, but that's what Hera pretty much does. She pretty much takes care of this plant better, like as if it's like a real person, like her own child. And it gets very symbolic close to the end in the third act, where after the fact that Hera loses Grace because of Corey, Hera ends up actually burying Grace in the backyard as a sort of burial, as like saying, you know what, I'm letting go of the fact that this plant who I loved as a child is dying on me, and this is a tearful goodbye to this plant because I love this plant so. Even though it does remind me about the trauma that has happened. So closing out right now is pretty much closing out on like talking about the movie, I should say. Closing out on the movie is, what is this movie trying to tell us? What is this movie teaching us? So, I mean, it's basically, like I mentioned before, it's teaching us about the hardships that women have in the workplace. You know, dealing with a lot of emotional abuse from like different co-workers, as we can see, like Hera is dealing with abuse from Vicky and Zach. Also, it's teaching like how sometimes we have this incessant need to be perfect. You know, Lori, who is constantly berating Hera for like her appearance and everything that she does wrong, kind of almost forces Hera to kind of look for perfection in a way, and not trying to cause trouble. Another sense of like where Hera tries to be perfect for the job is when Gabe, he finds out about Hera and Zach, and Hera thinks she should talk to HR about what happened between her and Zach. Gabe ends up kind of convincing her to not go to HR because HR wasn't going to do anything to Zach and they weren't going to take her side over his. So, which is stuff that happens in real life, man. I've have dealt with some HR issues, not necessarily to HR, but just talking to supervisors about certain things. And yeah, sometimes just seeing how, I want to say, useless HR is. I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of y'all probably have useless HR people working there. You go to them about a problem, hoping that it'll get solved, and you end up finding out that nothing ends up getting solved at all. It's terrible. It's a terrible feeling. It's just like, it makes you feel like, well, what's the point of going to HR if HR is not going to do anything about the situation? You know, it just feels like it's all being swept under the rug, you know. But it also talks about like just the overall work-life balance, which we all understand is pretty hard. HighonFilms actually had a closing moments about like how women are dealing with the workforce and everything like that. So in their article, they say, it is a truth universally acknowledged that a working woman will always be paid less than a man, although international organizations like ILO have advocated for equal pay and made efforts to instrumentalize their demands. Concerted results from all fronts have never been achieved. The ILO and WHO jointly published a report in 2022 titled The Gender Pay Gap in the Health and Care Sector, a global analysis in the time of COVID-19 on the gender pay gap. Apart from the numerous findings related to the ever-increasing pay gap, the report also stated that the more feminized the work is, the lesser the pay. That means the works which are traditionally associated with women are kept underpaid, and women are rarely allowed to rise above that tier. To that ordeal, one can add the motherhood penalty. The dwindling pay of working mothers accounts for most of the area of the pay gap. See, this is why a lot of women go to OnlyFans, man. Man, we got so much pay gap, man, going on, and it's ridiculous. Bro, I can't even hate women for trying to say, you know what, fuck this shit, I'm going to OnlyFans. Post some toe pics, post some bikini pics, make millions and shit. All right, that probably inappropriate to say, but man, reading all this, it just really highlights the fact, like, you know, we are a piece of shit society with our economic system. But anyway, going on. According to the report, after embracing motherhood, most women take a sabbatical from work. A sabbatical which should be their right, but turns out to be the main reason behind men leaving them behind in terms of pay. I mean, that's fucked up as well, you know? Like, you're not gonna push them up higher because they're having kids. That's crazy. But anyway, woman takes a break. She is neither considered for promotions nor for pay raises, unlike her male colleagues, and this becomes an eternal cycle. Adding to this is the routine physical, mental, and sexual harassment of women in workplaces, something that is highlighted in this movie. The demands for the redressal of harassment have only increased with time, with no parallel increase in sight of the mechanisms to redress them. Film gains its thematic material from this issue. The poor state of Hera's social life, a result of America's toxic work culture, starts haunting her inner mental condition until it takes the form of a monster. Hera is punished not only for aiming higher than what she is traditionally bound, but also for her motherly desires, which she does with grace. Many such instances underline this. One of the instances can be the conversation between Hera and Zach after the latter deliberately causes embarrassment to the former in the conference room. In the conversation, Zach belittles Hera and suggests that she should take up more womanly roles, or worse, get married to a rich man. Hera's imaginary motherhood exemplifies the real-life motherhood of working women. The price she pays for showing her desire to be a mother is equated with the price that mothers mothers have to pay at their workplace to embrace motherhood. And this is just like the way this article was written was definitely like better than what I've said and how I've worded things. And I think it pretty much highlights what I'm thinking about as far as like how toxic workplaces are for working women, especially working women that are trying to develop families and trying to get ahead in life as well. So anyway, last part of this is that I want to highlight some solutions for all those that are dealing with toxic work environments right now. I know this is not too film worthy. This is going on more so about our own social life, but let's be honest. This is film and guts, and the guts parts is partly opinion. And right now, I want to give solutions because I am very solutions based. I mean, some people will probably say I'm not, but I am very solutions based. I do like to look for solutions, but I looked at this article on healthline.com and they gave tips for dealing with toxic work environments. Let's see what they say is really good to kind of like help you kind of navigate through that toxic work environment. And I'm be honest right now. I mean, I read this before and I myself, I'm already at a loss with some of the toxic jobs I've dealt with because I'm just like, I think it's too lost in the sauce for them. They've been toxic for many years, but maybe for you guys out there, you Team Doom, y'all probably would have a better chance with this than I myself with toxic work environments, you know? Yeah, so let's go ahead and look at some of the tips. So remember, it's not your fault. The negativity at your job isn't your fault, although having positive attitude and collaborative mindset may help in certain situations. Remember that there's only so much you can do to improve the culture at work. And that's one thing that is true. I mean, you can't change the culture at the job if it's been that culture for a very long time. And that's something I've learned over the years. You can't change culture. You could change it in a sense, but you're not going to change it completely. Don't expect a change overnight. Take your lunch break elsewhere. Be sure to take a lunch break where you can get out of the work environment. Sit in nature if possible. Set boundaries. Don't get bullied into skipping your lunch or working after hours for no pay. Explain to your boss that you need your breaks and time off to recharge and do your job well. I have seen coworkers actually being told to work like 12-hour shifts with no lunch breaks. And mind you, like our job is unionized, so it's like to have no lunch breaks is ridiculous, but that's neither here nor there. But anyway, don't get involved in the drama. Try to walk away from any drama or gossip. Nothing positive will come out of it. That is true. Stay focused on your goals. Do your best to stay positive and stay in a positive state of mind. You won't be here forever, and you have bigger and better things ahead of you. And that is something that's really hard to do sometimes. Like when you're in a toxic work environment, sometimes you just feel trapped. Honestly, like you just feel trapped. You feel like you're stuck in the mud. And when you're really trying to look for something else, and there's like, well, just like this job market right now, not many jobs are hiring. It's all just terrible positions. There's ghost jobs everywhere, which is ridiculous. And it just makes you feel a bit hopeless and trapped. But the thing is, like, you have to have that mindset where you got to stay focused and you got to kind of see like, okay, this is not going to be my forever life. I remember dealing with my toxic work experience, and I told myself, I can't remember how long ago it was, but I told myself this is not going to be a place I stay forever, you know? So I have to do what I have to do to kind of get out of this place. And same thing for y'all out there. If you are dealing with a toxic workplace right now, you know, you're feeling anxious, you got boss up your ass, your relationships is kind of crumbling because of it. Your place is not a workplace forever, honestly. You're not going to be stuck there forever. You're not going to be there forever. And although you may probably crumble some relationships, just know if you do have people that love you, they really do love you and they would do anything for you. And even if like all your actions is based on, or just like not based on, but reactions to what's happening at work, people forgive. People will forgive. The ones that truly love you will forgive you and will excuse like, you know, the bullshit. Because at the end of the day, I mean, we all go through it, man. We all go through it, honestly. So, yeah, that's just my take on that part, you know, for any of y'all that are dealing with this shit right now. But yeah, man, stay positive, man. But have an after work ritual to raise your vibes. Do something after work to psychologically clear away the negativity. You can take a walk in nature, take a hot shower, or call a friend. Stick with a few trustworthy coworkers. It's a good idea to keep a few work allies so you can support and confide in one another. Now, see, that's cool and all, but, you know, sometimes you gotta be worried about motherfuckers at work, man. There's some niggas that's just, like, not trustworthy at all, and they be having ulterior motives. They'll come to your face and be like, oh, yes, you know, I understand, but, you know, at the end of the day, you know, some people are just trash. Some people will just use you, you know. I mean, that's just my idea. Unless, like, you know, they're working a totally different department from you, then maybe that's all right. But, you know, still, gossip is gossip, and people like to spread gossip just to have the drama. But anyway, don't compromise your values. If someone at work is being cruel to you, do your best to not respond in kind. It will only make the situation escalate. Engage in regular stress coping techniques. Take a meditation, yoga, or engage in daily exercise to help you handle chronic stress. And that is very important. Also, it's just like getting some exercise in and what have you, you know. Plan your exit. If toxic work situation isn't going to improve anytime soon, start search for your new position. So yeah, and those are just like things that y'all could do to deal with like the toxic work environment, the toxic stress and what have you. Honestly speaking, I mean, again, like I said before, I've dealt with my toxic work shit, and yeah, it's okay. I mean, in a way, but I mean, still not okay. But yeah, and if y'all have like people that you know that are dealing with that, I mean, just make sure to be there for them. I mean, just know like people do end up having toxic, well, people do end up carrying that toxic work environment stress in their daily lives. And I mean, and that's the biggest problem that we have with this whole toxic work environment culture that is so, I'm not in a way love, but kind of romanticize a bit. Not even really romanticize, but you know, it's just something that's been a thing, like in a way romanticized because people just say like, well, this is just the culture of the job. This is just how work is. It's like, nah, motherfucker, that's just how you guys are, you know. But anyway, coming back to the ending of the film, I did talk about the tree monster and how like it represents Hera's rage and how much it just affected her life and everything like that. So, you know, by the end of the film, Hera ends up seeing Zack again, who drunk comes over to her house. Fortunately for her, I mean, because before he got there, she was about to commit suicide. So, He got there, she confronted him, and in that whole repressed rage, which is why I say this tree monster represents her rage, she ends up killing the abuser. Which a lot of people will probably be excited to know about that. But that is the movie. If y'all want to check that movie out, that movie is on Amazon Prime. Definitely give it a watch. So right now, I am about to go ahead and get into the outro.
Now get my way, bitch.
Alright, y'all, so welcome to the outro of Film and Guts. And like I mentioned before, if you want to follow me, it's your boy Walterdoom on them social medias: Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Walterdoom Horror. I do not have Twitter. I've mentioned this once before. Twitter is a barren wasteland. So yeah, I'm done with that. If y'all want to donate to the show, I have a Ko-fi account. I am accepting donations. If you want to, bless your boy with the little change and what have you, just because you enjoy the show, definitely go ahead, bless your boy. But I'm gonna go ahead and get into the outro right now. And as y'all know, my outros is now about what I've watched during the time before I recorded this podcast. So a couple of things that I've watched. I haven't watched too many movies, I'm gonna be honest. But some of the movies that I did watch, I watched Alice in Terrorland, which was terrible. Don't watch that shit. I don't know what crackheads was giving money to make this film, but yeah, I thought freaking Blood and Honey 2 was terrible. I thought Mousetrap was terrible. Nah, fam. Y'all need to watch Alice in Terrorland. That movie is horrible. A couple of other movies that I watched was both re-watches. So I watched Batman Under the Red Hood, one of the classic DC cartoon movies that I like. Batman The Dark Knight Returns Part 1 and Part 2, and all three of those are right now. Well, probably not when this episode comes out, because when I watched them, they were all on Tubi. Let's just say that. Yeah, they were all on Tubi. So yeah, if y'all can find them anywhere, if they have it anywhere, y'all can check them out. Definitely check them out. But other than that, I'm signing out for the rest of the day. This is your boy Walterdoom signing out. This has been Film and Guts. This is America. Don't let them catch you slipping now. Stay diabolical, people. Peace.